We want to use emotions, right?
Yeah.
So, for example, have you ever felt what it's like to slam an elbow against someone's jaw and feel the bone shatter?
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of shocking,
Mm-hmm.
like grotesque, but it also makes you wonder, no, I don't know what that feels like.
Yeah.
And so then what would the description go into? That's how I felt when I was in 10th grade when I was bullying this one kid and I got kicked out of school. Something like this. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So we're using shock factor in order to elicit emotion to make someone question something and continue reading.
Ooh. Mm-hmm.
Okay?
Yeah.
This is something that I found among everybody's essays, not just your guys' grade or class.
It was missing or it was
Missing.
uh,
The emotional impact is missing. Okay? So this is why I am showing you guys this, particularly with the hook. Because if you have a good story, even if it is a good story, if you don't have a good hook, it's quite boring to read. Because it doesn't have enough emotional connection. So last time we talked about characters, do you guys remember? Now we like to watch and read a story because the characters are connected to us emotionally. We are emotionally invested in their lives. Right? The same thing as you, right? If you're the character in a personal narrative, you have to connect emotionally with the reader in order for them to want to continue the story. And so how do we do that? We use a really strong opener. Okay? Alright, any questions? So we have anger, we have joy, we have disgust, right? What are some other emotions that are pretty strong that we might want to elicit in order to get a hook?
sad.
Sadness. Okay, so how do we elicit sadness?
Anxiety.
Anxiety. How do we elicit sadness first? How do we make the reader feel sad?
Heart shattering into million pieces.
Okay, but how?
Huh?
What words do we need to use? How do we need to frame it?
Mm. Like heartbreaking.
Do
Kind
you
of.
have an example?
Oh.
You can make up just make up
Really?
one.
Oh, my heart shattered into a million pieces on the day I heard about somebody's death. About my parents' death, maybe.
Could be.
Yeah.
But how do we make the reader connected? So we know as the writer how we're emotionally connected, right? But how do we make the reader connected to the characters in the story? Because to them, they have no emotional attachment. They don't know the parents, they don't know the character. They only know what you tell them. Right? So, how do we make them connected to something to make them feel sad? Alright, let's talk about it. So you guys ever seen Marley and Me? Marley and Me?
What's that?
Marley and Me is a story about a dog. Okay? Okay? It's a story about a dog and a person. Let's call him Bob. Okay? Bob is the owner of Marley. Seems like a pretty straightforward story, right? So the dog, person, what do you think the story is about?
Their life together.
Yes, their life together. So he gets Marley when she's a baby, right? And throughout the story, we see landmarks or events that occur. Like maybe Marley's pee training, like potty training. But dogs don't use the potty, they just use the pad, so maybe pad training or something like that. Okay, maybe Marley does a funny thing. Okay, maybe Marley eats something weird and they have to go to the vet in order to get it, throw up, something like that. And then maybe it goes along, and then Bob meets Sarah. and then they get married here. They get married, okay, and then they have a baby. So they have a baby. Now what happens to the dog? Parents have to take care of their baby, so what do they do less for the dog?
Less attention.
Less attention. Okay, so less attention, and then what happens to the dog? We show it from the perspective of the dog as being less and less cared for.
Mm.
And then what do you think ends up going on from there? Maybe the dog acts out. Dog makes messes. Right? And so now we've lived this entire life with this dog, from the baby all the way to its hardship, right?
Yeah.
And then what happens? What do you think happens at the end? The dog dies.
Oh. Mm.
So you went through an entire lifetime with this dog being raised. You found all these memories, these core memories of this dog and this life there. And what do? You grow emotionally attached to this character, Marley.
Yeah.
And then the dog dies.
You feel sad.
You feel sad because it feels like you've lost a loved one of your own. A lot of people cried at this movie because it was so emotionally attached to this dog.
Mm.
Especially people who are animal people. And maybe at one point you've experienced something like this with a pet that has died. If you don't have pets, that's fine too. But it's the concept.
Yeah.
Right? Okay, so we're emotionally attached until we feel sadness, right? But if we didn't watch